Welcome, everyone, to another edition of SCRC's Let's Talk Caregiving. I'm your host, Roberto Velasquez, President and CEO of Southern Caregiver Resource Center, and I'm here as always with my co-host, Martha Rañón, our Executive Vice President. Hi, Martha.
Hey, Roberto. I am so glad to be here and speaking with you about all of the wonderful things that we have been doing this year. And I know that as we are wrapping up this calendar year, there's a lot that we really need to reflect on and really take stock of all the wonderful things that we've been doing. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And I just want to kind of remind our audience how caregiving is so incredibly universal. In our country, Martha, and I know you know this, and probably most of our audience does too at this point, there are almost 50 million caregivers providing care in the United States. And the value of that care, unpaid care, I should say, is over $470 billion of unpaid care. In California, it's close to 5 million caregivers that provide roughly about $63 billion in unpaid care. And in San Diego, we're looking at about 490,000 caregivers. That's like filling Petco Park, where the San Diego Padres play, over 9 times. And that value of the number of care of the hours that people provide here in San Diego is roughly about $9 billion. So this caregiving is huge and it continues to grow. And in fact, within 5 years, by 2030, that 490 is going to be about 540. And it's going to go for $9 billion to like $12 billion in unpaid care. So it's almost like there's no exemption. You live long enough, you're going to either need a caregiver or you're going to be a caregiver.
That's right. I can't, as you're putting these numbers and mentioning the impact that caregiving has on our society, I just can't believe that there are so many caregivers. And from the perspective of the work that I do here at SCRC and with my amazing team, we're always trying to connect people. We're always doing outreach and doing events so that people know that we're here for them. And, just given the fact that there are so many caregivers out there, our challenge is still the fact that there are so many people who do not know about SCRC and these wonderful services that could be so beneficial to them. And that is a challenge for us, as you know, because you would think that with so many people that are caregiving, that are providing all of these free services, because nobody's getting paid as a caregiver to provide these free services, that need to balance and that need to really incorporate some of these strategies and management of these difficult behaviors is going to become even more important, as you say, as we age, as we take on different caregiving responsibilities. We will know people who are in need of caregivers or who are caregivers.
You're absolutely right, Martha. And I will say, the number of people who are caregivers, it's so great. It's so great. And like you said, there's always a pocket of family members who don't identify as caregivers, who don't think that our services are for them. And I think that's one of the most wonderful things that your team does out in the community is they help people self-identify as a family caregiver. A lot of times, and I hear this all the time from our promotoras and your outreach workers, they'll share with me and they'll say things like, I was at a resource fair and I was handing out my flyers and somebody came up to me and said, no, I'm not a caregiver. And then they'll ask them, what do you do? And they say, well, I do help my mom with grocery shopping. I do help my mom take her to the doctor's appointments. I help my brother and I go over and check on her. Or my sister's the one that's there all the time and I just pay their bills. And then they say, well, you're a caregiver. And so part of the goals that SCRC is for us to help people become aware that they are also caregivers.
I'm thinking about a couple of caregivers that I've come across and talked to, because they've said those very same things, right? Their mother is in the hospital because she fell and maybe broke a hip. And obviously that means that mother's going to have to come home and need additional attention and care. But the adult children do not consider themselves caregivers. They're just saying, well, I'm taking care of my mom and she needs me. And of course I'm going to do that. That means you're a caregiver. And I know it's easy for us to identify because this is the field that we work in. But I was also a person who didn't consider myself a caregiver when I was clearly a caregiver. It is just that we are not used to defining ourselves as that. And if we don't define ourselves as the caregivers that we truly are, then how are we going to seek services, right? I say that to people all the time. If you are a caregiver and you find yourself where you can't balance and you don't know where to start and you're becoming very stressed and even depressed because nobody else is kind of lining up to help you, that's why we are here. We are here to help you. We're here to support, but we're also here to validate what you're feeling. Caregiving is not easy. And sometimes being an adult child to a mother or a father or a relative or a friend or a neighbor is not easy, but that is why we are here.
You're absolutely right. And, I think one of the challenges that families have is they think that accessing services, what is it going to cost me? What's all the red tape? Do I have to apply for certain types of benefits first? What kind of government agency are you? These types of things run through your head. And when you're a family caregiver, you're so overwhelmed with the care that you're providing that you don't even want to think about those things. So I want to put this out there to all the families in San Diego and Imperial County, is that if you're providing support, just give us a call, because all our services, first of all, are free. Mm-hmm. And it's very simple. You give us a call, you send us an email, you go on to our website at scrc.care. You can even start yourself by clicking on the Care Nav button and start entering information, and somebody will get back to you, and then we'll start that conversation with you. And it's very simple. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time because depends on your needs, right? Because our family consultants, who are also, by the way, trained master level clinicians, they are experts and they know what it's like to be a caregiver. They're also an expert in the field of caregiving, and they will help you they will do an assessment with you, a very comprehensive assessment. And this might be the first time you as a caregiver is being asked, how are you feeling? How are you doing? And with that care plan, with that assessment, they help develop really great care plans for you, with you, so that it helps take your, 100, 200 priority items to narrow it down to maybe 2 or 3 or 4 to get started. And then they work with you ongoing through your journey.
What I also want to let our audience know is, if they are not aware already, is that we are the leading provider of caregiving services throughout San Diego and Imperial counties. And we have wonderful programs that are both in person, online, in English, in Spanish, again, free of charge. And they're so wonderful because in every one of those programs, we incorporate the need for self-care, the understanding of what the person that you are caring for is going through and how they might be behaving, and help you develop some of those skills to manage those difficult behaviors. Everything that we do is very intentional and very much culturally adapted and researched so that you get the best type of support that is available out in the community. So I just want to make sure that everyone here knows that about Southern Caregiver Resource Center.
Yeah, and thanks for saying that. And I want to echo what you're just saying, Martha, because one of the things that I'm very proud of as an organization is that one of the things that we do, Martha and I do, along with our leadership team, is that all our program decisions are data driven. So we actually had identified a while back that a large percentage of the family caregivers that were coming to us were working professionals. They were working outside of the home, caring for an aging relative, most often with Alzheimer's or related dementia. So very, very tiring, very overwhelming. And they were still caring for young children in the home or adolescents. So they're what we call the sandwich generation. And that was a majority of the family caregivers fell under that category. So what did we do at Southern Caregiver Resource Center? Martha and I created the iCare portal, which has hundreds of the most amazing caregiver tips, live stream videos, and there's just all kinds of fact sheets and information and helpful tips that people can log in and just review whatever they want, pretty much, at their own leisure, at their own time. They don't have to come and sit in a class. I mean, remember, Martha, when we started these programs a few years back, I remember we used to struggle to get 30, maybe 50 people in a class, maybe, 20 people in a class. And then Martha said, let's go live stream. So we started live streaming, and then all of a sudden we had 400 people chiming in to learn on the topic that Martha was teaching.
And of course, it's just the benefit of living in this digital age, because obviously that would never have happened in the past. And so that's why I want to make sure that our audience takes advantage of our resources. Like Roberto was saying, that iCare portal, if you go to scrc.care, which is our website, it takes you directly to different tabs that you can check out, review, click on at your own leisure, videos, a lot of programming, even a series on self-care and how to utilize those as tools to diminish some of the stressors that we all feel, and just in the day-to-day lives, but also as caregivers.
Martha, I want to congratulate you and your team this last fiscal year. I don't know if you saw the data yet, but
yes,
through your educational programs, you reached almost nearly 44,000 people through education, and over 100 and almost 173,000 people through your outreach efforts, for a combined over 217,000 individuals. That's quite an accomplishment. That's a huge reach.
Absolutely. We are definitely not sitting idly. We are doing everything we can to connect families, caregivers, friends. Like we said earlier, almost everyone is either a caregiver or knows a caregiver. And so we want to make sure that you don't say, oh, I wish I would have known. I wish I would have had this resources when I was caring for my fill in the blank. We don't want you to have to go through this experience alone. It's not easy. I know that when I was a caregiver, I reached out to SCRC because I didn't even know where to begin. First of all, I didn't even know I was a caregiver. I just had heard that these were some services that were available. And all of a sudden I find myself thinking, I don't know what I could have done without these services. The counseling, just the level of interaction that is so professional. It's so the compassion, the understanding, even better than sometimes your own family members. That is really amazing and unique to our organization.
Yes. And I'll say that as a family caregiver, as a former family caregiver, and I know of the thousands of family caregivers that we support, we know from, again, going back to our data, we know that a large percentage of family caregivers actually suffer from clinical depression. Many of them actually are suffer from extreme loneliness and isolation. And we measure these through different validated instruments that we utilize during the assessments. And this is an extremely important thing that we're able to identify with the family caregivers, because it helps us to connect them to the right resources, like our 6-session cognitive behavioral therapy counseling program that Martha just mentioned. What a wonderful program. Not only does it validate you, but it's a problem solving type of counseling program. So if you're having certain issues as it relates to caregiving, if you're dealing with a lot of anxiety or stress or even anger as a family caregiver, the counseling program can really help you help change that for you, help with your mental health, help you learn skills that you can utilize to improve your own health, and then in turn be a better caregiver for your loved one. And then we have support groups. Last year, Martha, we served over 3,000 people in our support groups.
Wow.
That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people that have come through the program. So it's just amazing, the depth.
And I just want to say that the support groups are wonderful, because it also gives caregivers that network, right? That group of people who are having a similar experience, and sometimes friendships evolve from that. And that support, in addition to whatever else is going on in their lives, and those are wonderful. The one-on-one counseling that we have, I know that when I was a caregiver, I really benefited from that. Sometimes you are at your wit's end. You don't know where to go. Everything's just really stressful, especially if you're dealing with the care of someone who has dementia, Alzheimer's, some sort of memory loss. It is not as easy to communicate with those individuals, right? You can't just pick up and go and say, hey, let's go to the park. Oh, sure, no problem. It's like, why are you taking me there? Who are you? I do not recognize you. And then for caregivers, that becomes so much more difficult.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Martha. And I think one of the wonderful things that we are also able to provide is respite services. Gosh, when you've been a caregiver for 2, 3 years, 4 years, and we've had caregivers that have been doing it for like 8 to 10 years, it is just constant work, right? And to be able to get a break, even if it's for a few hours a day, is just one of those cherished moments that you could get as a caregiver. And we have the biggest respite program in the county of San Diego due to wonderful funding through our contracts with the county Aging and Independent Services and California Department of Aging. So it's just fantastic that we've been able to help so many more families with respite services, giving them that temporary relief of being a caregiver. I don't know, again, if the community has been aware, but last year we provided over 30,000 hours of respite services to 430 families. That's a lot of people that got respite. And that was over $1 million in respite. That's just a wonderful, wonderful service we've been able to provide.
And, I hear from caregivers all the time about how great respite is for them. Once they realize that they could use a little time for themselves and get out and do the things that they've been putting off, like going to the dentist, going to the doctor, even cutting their hair. The respite program is wonderful. But in addition to that, it is the companies that we work with. I know that because of the collaboration with Southern Caregiver Resource Center, our clients get additional benefits. And so we want people to know that this is a great service, but it's always a service that is so limited. The funding is always so limited, and the need is always so great. And that's why anyone who's listening, please, if you would like to support Southern Caregiver Resource Center, please do so, because your support, your financial support, really helps to continue delivering these free services that are so valuable. They're so helpful. And like Roberto, we said earlier, anyone might be needing these. And so we want to invite everybody to go to scrc.care, click on the donate button, help us continue these services that are so vital and free to the community of San Diego and Imperial County.
Yes, and I appreciate you saying that, Martha, because that is always one of the challenges that we have, right? As an organization, you heard me rattle off the numbers of people that are caregivers, family caregivers in our communities. And while we serve thousands of them, there are still thousands that cannot be served or do not, or we're unable to serve. And so additional funds are always greatly appreciated and very well utilized. In fact, 91%, over 90% of the funds that we get at our organization go to the direct service needs of family caregivers. Well, that's all the time we have left for this edition of Let's Talk Caregiving. To hear more of our podcasts, follow us on your favorite podcasting platforms or visit our website at scrc.care. I want to thank Martha for co-hosting another important discussion and our audience for tuning in. If you're providing support to a loved one, you don't have to do this alone. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. To connect to our programs and services, visit our website at scrc.care or call us at 1-800-827-1008. If you live outside of San Diego and Imperial counties, visit caregivercalifornia.org and connect to the Caregiver Resource Center nearest you. To support our efforts and make a tax-deductible donation, please go to scrc.care and click on the Donate tab. And remember, SCRC is here for you, caring for those who care for others.